Well, boys, welcome to the corral. Here we go. Hank's got his cowboy outfit on. We both got our cowboy boots.
Chaps.
Hey, dude, I don't wear chaps. All right, so yeah, it was about 1986. I had this Jaguar. All right, piece of junk. Oh my goodness. I always had trouble with this Jaguar, but this certain time, it was in my backyard on the driveway. I came out that morning to go to court, and I had a flat tire. So I took my wife's car, went to court, came back, and I was going to go ahead and change the tire. All right. Well, I put the jack underneath there, and I started jacking the thing up. All right. As I got the jack up, I got the tire out the back. I had everything loosened up. I start pulling the tire off. I take the other tire, and I put it right up next to the wheel well. And all of a sudden, the Jaguar starts shifting. All right. So me, not thinking, as I do, I put my hands under the wheel well. Oh yeah, actually one hand, because the other one was on the door handle, and I said, you know, it's just a car. We'll just roll it back, because I figured the tire's moving, you know, just move back this way. Well, it didn't work. The tire wasn't on the wheel, on the rim. The Jaguar slid down and pinned my hand between, oh yeah, I know, between the wheel well. That's hard to say. Say that 3 times fast. The wheel well, wheel well. It went wheel well for me. My hand got pinned between the wheel well. And there I am. Nobody's home. And I have this tendency, it's happened 2 or 3 times in my life, but I know when it's going to happen, that I can't endure a lot of pain. And I could feel the pain, and all of a sudden I could feel the metal cutting into my hand. I could feel the circulation slowly going out of my hand. And then as I'm standing there and I'm thinking, what in the world am I going to do? This thought came to me. You've heard the stories, all right? It's that adrenaline, all right? It is that overwhelming power. When you're put in that position, it comes in, and you know, I've heard the stories. They pick up Volkswagens and they take them off of people. Well, I went down and I said, okay, this is where it is. I'm going to lose my hand. So I'm down there and I'm straining, and it's just not coming. So then I'm thinking, I'm going to pass out. All right, so I had my phone on me. I didn't call my wife. I called my secretary. Boy, did I have a long time to live that one down. All right. Anyway, she called the rescue squad. But before the rescue squad got there, I was really beginning to feel dizzy. And I started looking around me, and in a last-ditch effort, and I knew I was getting ready to pass out. And I saw the tire iron down on the floor, on the ground. And I took that tire iron, and I stuck it underneath and pried it between the wheel well and the tire, and managed to get my fingers out of there. And then I passed out. But I tell you, it was absolute fear. I was scared to death. I was so afraid that I was going to lose my fingers. Because if I passed out, who knows? I'm not a doctor. Doctor could probably tell me. I may have very well lost my fingers depending on how long I was there. Maybe not, but that was in my head, and it didn't really matter. It didn't really matter what the doctor would have said. I knew I was going to lose my fingers. So that was my answer to that. That was the time when I absolutely had fear that I was going to lose something. In that case, it was my fingers. And I realized fear overwhelms me so much of the time. And I thought, to start off tonight, because we're at the corral, because we're taking a Western tone, I thought I'd tell you a story. I'll take you back to 1836. Back in 1836, there was a group of Americans that had crossed over the border into Texas to join a bunch of insurgents who were, Texas at that point was a part of Mexico. So these American citizens and these Mexican insurgents were fighting against General Santa Anna in a battle to claim the state of Texas and to take over that part. They pushed and pushed, and they pushed them across the Rio Grande, all the way back. General Santa Anna muscled up his forces on the other side of the Rio Grande, and he started his push back. He pushed this small army all the way back to a little town called San Antonio. Inside of San Antonio was a fort. It was called the Alamo. Inside of the Alamo, all of these people, about 170 to 230 men, were holed up inside, ready to take on the entire Mexican army, hoping and praying that they would get a chance, that the reserves that they had called out to, that they had sent the runners off to get, would show up in time to save them. It was the night before. It was the night before the big battle of the Alamo. Inside, with the 230 people, there were the likes of Davy Crockett and Sam Bowie. All men well trained in warfare. And yet the general of the army from the inside of the Alamo knew that they could not withstand very long the Mexican army. So he sent out by a lady to the general of the Mexican army. He sent this request. He said, "I will surrender everything that's in this fort, all of our weapons, all of our materials, everything that we've got. I'll surrender that to you. Spare only my life and the life of my men." A lady took the message to the general of the Mexican army. After a short time, the lady returned. As the general of the army inside of the Alamo looked at the response, he lowered his head. It was not as he had expected. It was not what he had hoped. The response from the general of the Mexican army was, "Surrender is unconditional. Life is not guaranteed. Traitors may very well be executed." And with that, the guys inside of the Alamo made a decision that night that they would fight till they could fight no longer, hoping only to withstand this army as long and until the reserves showed up. Sadly, the reserves did not show up. The next morning, about 4 o'clock in the morning, the first wave of Mexican soldiers went against the Alamo. Several hours later, the second wave of soldiers went against. The soldiers on the inside had withstood the first 2 waves, but the third wave was too much. They knocked down the walls as they moved room to room, killing each and every person inside of the Alamo, save 2 people, a woman and a slave. And I thought, as I thought about that story, I wondered, what would have happened, really, if he had surrendered? He would have at least had the possibility of having life. But by staying in and fighting and saying absolutely no, I will not do this, I will not surrender at any cost unless I am promised my life, he essentially made the choice for his death. You see, I think surrender, as Americans, we don't get that. All right, we don't get surrender because in our minds, and as much as we know and as much history as we've read, we don't get this whole idea of surrender. All right, we've never surrendered to anybody that I'm aware of. Now, you could call the Vietnam War or something like that, but I don't really, you would never get anybody to admit that we actually surrendered in that. Because we have more willpower, we have more strength, we have more desire inside of us. And we will stand and we will fight for what we believe is right, and we will die trying. And yet God says, this intimacy, this relationship with me, he said, surrender is a good thing. And I struggle with that. I struggle with the whole idea of surrender. What does that look like in my life when I want to exercise my rights? When I come to that place where God says this and I say no? Because surrender means giving up. I mean, we've all experienced it. Think about maybe when you were a kid. You get out there, your bigger brother or your bigger sister, if she's a lot bigger than you, y'all get in there and you start wrestling, and she pins you down, or he pins you down. And what does he say or she say before they let you up? Give up, say uncle. That's surrender. That is saying, you're bigger than I am. I don't have the power. I don't have the strength to withstand what you're doing to me. And for fear of where you're going to put me in the hospital, I surrender. I give up. Some of us were bullies. Some of us never got to that place of real surrender. And so we've gone through our entire life acting like the bully and pushing it down on everybody else and never really giving in, or at least never really admitting it. Because I think surrender is one of those things that I don't want to raise that white flag. I don't want to say, I give up. I don't want to say that I don't have control any longer. I don't want to say yes to God because he asked me of hard things to do. And he says, are you willing to do this? Are you really willing to say, I surrender? So with all of that going on, I wanted to take you through a journey of mine tonight of what surrender has looked for me for the past 4.5 years. It's a story that I wrote about 2 years ago, the first time I shared it on a Saturday morning. It's a story of my life as I encountered each situation as a new believer and walking this walk and encountering God and struggling with what he really wanted me to do. And I wanted to share that with you. It's called One Yes at a Time. When you pulled on my heart 5 years ago, in the middle of the brokenness of my life, I finally said yes to you after 45 years of no's. Still not knowing and understanding what it was to be your child, I said yes to my wife, who asked me to go with her to church, even though I didn't want to. As I sat in the back row of the church every week, I said yes to you. Each time, crying as you softened my heart. When my wife wanted me to go to the encounter group, even though I didn't want to go, I said yes to you and to her. When you were pulling so hard on my heart, and I knew you wanted to break down those walls, I said yes to you. When I told my story to Peggy and Woody the first time, and they told me I needed to be baptized, I first said no, not me. But then I said yes. When Woody asked me to get in front of the church and share my story over 4.5 years ago, I said yes to you. When I started my office up and you told me to give someone money when I didn't have it, I said yes to you. When I began to understand what you wanted, that you wanted me to spend time with you, I said yes, I will cut off the TV. Yes, I will cut down my vineyard. Yes, I will quit planting the garden because they took away time from you.